came into the room and she's like, look at my phone. And then I couldn't see it, so I had to look at mine. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game, but I can't bet against Tom Brady. I have the Bucs winning 31-27 and Tom Brady going to his 10th championship.
Aaron Rodgers and his people were like, they listened to our episode and they said, hold our cheesehead or coat.
Donovan Mitchell, who right now looks to be a superstar.
Just amazing. And I don't care what the Red Sox got for trading Mookie Betts and David Price. The Dodgers, in my opinion, win it. I don't have to see what players they gave up.
Yeah, that's not just the Chiefs. That's Andy Reid. He knows the defenses so well because he's such a great offensive mind. That
well, you said you can't bet against Tom Brady, and as a Cowboys fan and what I just did last weekend, I am not gonna bet against Aaron Rodgers.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life.
Just goes to show the offense for the Dallas Stars could not keep up, and when the defense needed to step up, the Lightning's offense just overpowered them.
Chris Paul is one of the most underrated players of all time. He's been the best player wherever he goes, and that includes with the Rockets. Yeah, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. I mean, that's all I can really say. There's 2 of the top 5 players in the league, and they are very, very good.
Yeah, and I really think the Clippers' chance to win the championship was last year, and they were up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets.
Hello, I'm Taylor Hearn, and you listen to The Outsiders' Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our 42nd episode. Last episode, we gave our own predictions for March Madness, and we invited y'all to come on and create your own bracket. And right now, we have 6 people in the group, and I think it's definitely a similar year to years past, as it is March Madness, and for our bracket, it is officially busted. We will get more into why it is busted. But in the lead, I'll just do top 3. We have Bragging Rights, Diesel 12 Gas, and NCAA March Sadness in the top 3 spots for the lead. And thank you for participating in the first ever March Madness bracket with Outsiders Opinions. And just to start us off on the crazy madness we are experiencing, the last men's NCAA tournament that didn't feature Kentucky, UNC, Duke, or Kansas in the Sweet 16 since 1979 is this year's March Madness. I'll let Austin start it off.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat, Kevin. It's a perfect way to show how crazy these past couple of months have been. Ever since COVID occurred, everything has become more and more crazy. And yeah, I think we can get right off to starting with the first 4. So the first 4 games started Thursday, last Thursday. And do you want to go over the first one?
Yes, I believe the first one was Michigan State versus, why am I blanking on their name?
UCLA.
UCLA, and we predicted UCLA win, and that was one of the picks that we actually got right, and it went into overtime. So
yeah, that was actually the last game, but I mean it's all fine. It's all the first 4. I don't think it matters which order we go in, but yeah, Michigan State had the lead early, and I really thought they may pull it out, but like you said, we predicted the game, and I thought UCLA would win the game, and they did. I think we can go to the next game between Texas Southern and Mount St. Mary's. This is a very slow game. Both teams kind of flip-flopped between the lead and Michael Weathers, a player I think a lot of people need to give respect to. He transferred from Oklahoma State, averaging 16 points at Oklahoma State. Transfers to Texas Southern and leads them to a tournament victory. Even if it's not in the first round, they still won this game, and I think a lot of respect needs to be shown towards them.
Yeah, definitely agree with what you said. They were able to pull it off, and that's a great thing. And I think we can move on to the next game.
Yeah, so in the next game, it was Wichita State and Drake. This was a very close game where Drake won by 1 point. Travis Etienne is a great player for Wichita State, but they could just not pull it out. He didn't have the best game. And even though some of the players for Wichita State played very well, Drake just pulled it out at the end.
Yeah, and for Wichita State, they went 3 out of 18 off three-pointers, while Drake shot for 7 out of 19 three-pointers, a huge thing. And the sad thing is Wichita State had 12 more free throws than Drake, but sad they couldn't pull it out. But good thing for Drake as they pull out the win.
Yeah, and I got him a much needed win to start off the tournament for them, and then we'll go to the I guess third game of the tournament, but uh, in a different order. So it was Appalachian State versus Norfolk State. Appalachian State was terrible to start this game, terrible, and I mean terrible. And then they started to come back, and they were actually up with around 3 to 5 minutes left. And then Norfolk State came back, composed themselves, and ended up winning this game.
Yeah, great job from Norfolk State to overcome that large lead from Appalachian State. And then Appalachian State, just another thing, they only missed one free throw. And while that was 15 out of 16, and then Norfolk State had 9 free throws and they missed 2 of them. So just an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, and I think we can move on to the first tournament game, which was between Florida and Virginia Tech. This was a crazy game. If you guys did not get to see it, the game ended up going into overtime because a Florida player missed both free throws up 3, and then a Virginia Tech guy runs all the way down the court, passes it to another guy, and they end up hitting a 3 and go into overtime. But Florida does hang on, does get the victory, and that's the first game of the tournament. I still had a bracket perfect at that point, but it wouldn't last for much longer.
Yeah, we predicted Virginia Tech would win, but Florida was able to pull it off. And I believe Florida had the player who got it was Appleby. He got like he had to leave the game real quickly, and he was almost able to come back into the game, which just shows a crazy thing about him and just added to the craziness as Florida was still able to pull it off without Appleby, who was playing great in that game.
Yeah, he got head butted, and you never like to see that when it comes to a player of his caliber. But it just it just happens like that sometimes, and he had to get through. So I think we can move on to the next tournament game, which I believe was between Arkansas and Colgate. This was a lot of games that people had Arkansas losing. A lot of people put them on upset alert because of how well Colgate shot from 3. However, they ended up, despite the game being close, winning this game handily by a score of 85 to 68, a 17-point victory, and they moved on to the next round.
Yeah, what you mentioned was absolutely right. As a lot of people were thinking Colgate could pull off the upset, and it looked that way into the start of halftime. But then Arkansas just pulled away, and they would do well further in the tournament. We'll get to that later.
Yeah, so I think we can move on to the third tournament game between Illinois and Drexel. This game started off closer than I predicted. However, they quickly turned it around. Illinois did, and ended up winning this game by a massive amount, 29 to be exact, and they moved on to the round of 32.
Yeah, this is definitely what we thought of Illinois when we predicted that they would go to the championship, and they just dominated Drexel, and we were hoping they would continue this further on. But I think we can move on to the next game, which would be, if I am correct, the Utah State versus Texas Tech, and it was a little close, but Texas Tech was able to pull it off. What do you think of the game?
Yeah, so Utah State kept it close until about the 10-minute mark in the second half, and then Texas Tech ended up getting a massive lead and ended up only winning by 13. But they handily won this game at the end of the game, and Utah State started to play better as the end of the first half started to go, but they just really couldn't hang with them as the game continued. And I think we can move on to the next game, which was between Loyola Chicago and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's best player, ACC Player of the Year, was out, which really harmed them. But Loyola Chicago has the best defensive rating on KenPom, and it really showed. What do you think about the game?
Yeah, one player who stood out to me from Loyola Chicago was Williamson, and not only is his name sounds like Zion Williamson for the Pelicans, but he was also part of the team. He was a freshman with Loyola Chicago when they made that incredible Final Four run, and he just has really played very well, and it's a good thing to see from Loyola of Chicago. And we got to see Sister Jean again, which was just a nice sight. Just added to out of this world of craziness, as you mentioned in the beginning, just a similar sight and a good thing to see.
Yeah, in the next game we have probably the biggest upset in the tournament: Ohio State and Oral Roberts. Um, Kevin and I went to school with a member of the Oral Roberts team, Max Asmus, who played outstanding in this game and the next one, which we will get to. What did you think about the game, Kevin?
It was incredible. He did go to the same school as us, so we were definitely rooting for him. He is the best scorer, or he has the most points scored in our school's history, and he is continuing to do that in at the college level. And I was just so shocked that he played the entire game, and he was just hitting mid court shots earlier in the game, and he was going viral on Twitter.
Yeah, he definitely played well. His partner in crime, Kevin O'Banner, definitely helped adding. O'Banner actually scored 30 points while Asmus scored 29. They both played outstanding. They both proved why some respect should be put on Oral Roberts' organization. Uh, yeah, I think that I heard of many people saying that they may should have been a 16 seed, but after the run they're on, I definitely think they should have been a higher seed, and I think they're definitely proving it. They had the highest scoring duo in all of college basketball, the highest scorer in all of college basketball, and they're not to be taken lightly, even in the round that we're about to talk about next.
Yeah, I think we can move on, and uh, I'll let you introduce the game.
Yeah, so the next game we have is Oklahoma State and Liberty. This was a very interesting game where I really thought Liberty had a great chance of winning, but Oklahoma State won by 9. Cade Cunningham played well down the stretch, and it really took some effort for them to get it through, but uh, it worked out in the end, and they moved on to the next round.
Yeah, you did mention how Cade Cunningham played really well down the stretch, but at the beginning, I think in the first half, he only had like 6 points. And I think a couple of those came from through free throws. So it's definitely not the start he was looking forward to in the tournament, but he was able to help Oklahoma State pull it out. But they did also not shoot well. Out of the 15 3 pointers they shot, they only made three. So that's 20%. And that's not what you want to see when you're trying to score a lot of points.
Yeah, and in the next game we have let me look. We have Baylor and Hartford. This game was not close. It was until about halftime, and then Baylor really asserted their dominance on the uh, 16 seed Hartford. They played well the entirety of the game. It was a 24-point, 79-55 win for Baylor, and even though Hartford I think played better than many people thought, the scoring by Jared Butler and co was insane.
Yeah, Hartford, I think, had it close for a little bit, but something we just saw throughout the uh, day was that the number one seeds would have a little trouble in the first half against the lower seeds, but then they would pick it up in the second half, which just goes to show maybe the better depth that Baylor has and other teams like Baylor had, and the mid game adjustments that the coaches made for the higher seeds.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then the next game was Wisconsin and North Carolina. Roy Williams heading into this game was 29-0 in first rounds, and now he's 29-1 as Wisconsin won 82 to 60, 85 to 62. It was really impressive to see how dominant Wisconsin was, especially at the end of that game. And like you said, this is the first time in ever that those four teams had never been in it, and UNC was one of them. And Wisconsin definitely deserves to move on to the next round. What do you think?
Yeah, Wisconsin played great. They shot 48% from 3 point, and they did a great job getting defensive rebounds as they had 27 versus North Carolina's, and I think that led to help them. Oh my god, my bad. Helped them win the game so dominantly, and it was very contrary to how like they're 8 and 9 seed. This is supposed to be a close game, but it wasn't that way, and Wisconsin ran away with it.
Yeah, and next we have the biggest win in tournament so far, 31 points between Houston and Cleveland State. This one was never close. It yeah, it was a blowout from the start. I didn't really give them a chance. I thought that Cleveland State was the worst team in the tournament in my opinion, and they were a 15 seed playing against a 2 seed, and it really showed. What do you think?
Yeah, you hit it right on the dot. Houston continuing their success from against Cincinnati, where they just blew them out in the championship, and they continued to do that against Cleveland State.
Yeah, and in the next game we have another upset between North Texas and Purdue. Javion Hamlet had 24 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. He played outstanding. I really think North Texas, after this win, should get some credit. This was their first win in tournament history. They had a lot of seniors on this roster who got to see a tournament win against a Big Ten team, and they got to move on to the next round. What did you think?
Yeah, shocked a lot of people, but didn't shock us as we had North Texas winning against Purdue, and it was just great to see North Texas pull it off, and you could see all the media members that went to UNT, and they were just so thrilled to have UNT win their first ever game in March Madness history, as you said.
Yeah. In the next game, we had a very close game. I think the best game probably of this round, besides the Oral Roberts Ohio State game, was the Rutgers Clemson game. This game was down to the wire, and Rutgers eventually pulled it out. I thought both teams played well, but not great. It was a low-scoring 60 to 56 game, but a Big Ten team ended up winning. They had not been in the tournament since 1991, the 91 tournament. So another team that hasn't won in a while wins their first game in the tournament in decades. What do you think?
Yeah, a big player for Rutgers was, I believe, Young, as he played 34 minutes and just scored 13 points, but made 3 out of his 5 3-pointers. And it was just a good thing to see. And Clemson was just unable to close it out in the last few seconds. And I think they missed a couple of free throws, which could have helped bring the lead. Diminish the lead against Rutgers.
Yeah, it was a good game. Now I can think we can move on to another upset. It's just three straight double-digit seeds winning games, and we have Syracuse beating San Diego State by 16. This was a very dominant performance by Syracuse. Buddy Boeheim had 30 points. Um, I was truly impressed by the ability of the 2-3 zone that Jim Boeheim has installed his entire career. It was hard for San Diego State to break, and they really could not score. What do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned the 2-3 zone, and that is a huge thing on defensive side. But then on the offensive side, you have Buddy Boeheim, and he is just electric from 3-pointer. And Syracuse definitely shot a lot, but actually, um, I'm so sorry. I'm just having some technical difficulties, but San Diego State shot 43 pointers, and Syracuse was able to pull it off. But Buddy Boeheim just was excellent and efficient at 3-pointers.
Yeah, definitely. The next game was West Virginia versus Morehead State. This was a much closer game than the 17-point win implies. But a huge possession uh, where West Virginia scored, I think, 6 points. They had an and one, and they hit a bucket, I guess 5 points. But because of the flagrant one foul, which I didn't really think it was a flagrant one foul. I know he had hit him in the face, but it was incidental contact, and I think it was a basketball move, and he really didn't look like looked like he was trying to avoid the guy, and that really turned the game, and Morehead State was not really given a chance after that.
Yeah, and another bad thing for Morehead State was that they had 18 turnovers in contrast to the Mountaineers who only had 6 turnovers, which is something goes to show when you need to take down the higher seed, you have to be really efficient on offense. And Morehead State did not do that against West Virginia.
Yeah, in our next game, the last game of day one of the round of 64 was Villanova versus Winthrop. This game was, I think, a good game. However, I believe Winthrop really could have won this game, and they didn't. Villanova held them out. They had a great plan instilled by the coach, and they really, even without their best player, Colin Gassiepi, still won the game.
Yeah, Villanova using their past success just through their coaches to really pull this out and show that even though they're not playing at their best, they were able to pull this out, and that's all that matters right now in the dance.
Yeah, definitely. Now we'll move on to the first game of day two of round one between Colorado and Georgetown. This game was not close. Georgetown had no chance. I thought they were, I even though they won their tournament, they were not a team that I believed was going to go far in this tournament, and it really proved here as they lost by 23. What'd you think?
Yeah, Colorado was just on fire from three as they were shooting 64%. And I believe the one player that was shooting just he was just lights out was Schwartz, as he was 5 for 7 on 3 pointers, and that was really just a in that combined with Georgetown not playing well on defense and leaving guys open at the 3 point line. Colorado just kept hitting them, and that left Georgetown in the dust.
Yeah, and now we can move on to the next game. Florida State versus UNC Greensboro. This game was close for a while, but Florida State really pulled away late. Isaiah Miller for UNC Greensboro tried to carry, but he couldn't, and it ended up with a Florida State win.
Yeah, Florida State was played really well, and just a good thing to see as their ACC counterparts were. Some of them played well, but Clemson did not play well.
Yeah, same thing with North Carolina. And we can move on to probably another upset that should have happened. Kansas got away with one here, and I really didn't think after this game they were going far, and it really proved in the next round. As Kansas won by 9 to Eastern Washington. There were so many players that played well for Eastern Washington, especially Tanner Groves, who went off, had a career high in points, and tried to. Him and his brother really almost carried Eastern Washington to a win over Kansas, and I was impressed by their play and not impressed by Kansas, but Kansas pulls it out.
Yeah, Kansas is not really the Kansas that we've seen in the past. They're just a lot of guys that work hard, and there's no really two star players like we see on Illinois, and I think that's what hurt them in the second round.
Yeah. Now we can move on to the fourth game of the day, LSU versus St. Bonaventure. I was kind of confident in St. Bonaventure's abilities, but it really didn't show here. LSU, I knew heading in, had a much better offense, and it really showed. LSU won by 15, and it wasn't really close when it came down to it.
Yeah, LSU just played really well, and they continued. They played really hard, like they did in the SEC championship, where they just could not. They came really close, but still lost to Alabama, and they continued to play well, but they actually won the game this time.
Yeah, next we can move on to the closest 116 matchup between Michigan and Texas Southern. Again, Michael Weathers for Texas Southern played outstanding, had 24 points on 8 of 18 shooting. Um, he's an amazing scorer. While he can't shoot threes as well as some players, he can get buckets, and I believe he deserves another chance at the higher level, especially the NBA. Um, I was inspired by his play, his willpower to try to do it against a great Michigan team, even though they were out Isaiah Livers. They could have won this game if they just played better during a certain stretch. They took out Michael Weathers during a part of it, and that's really when they blew open the lead. And um, I think he had a great college career, and I hope he gets a chance somewhere else. But again, Michigan too dominant, and they win this game.
Yeah, and that was when Texas Southern actually was winning the turnover battle with 10 turnovers while Michigan had 14. But Michigan was able to out rebound Texas Southern, and I think that helped them win the game.
Yeah. Next we have Creighton and UC Santa Barbara. This was the best game of the day. UC Santa Barbara missed I would say an easy layup. I mean, it wasn't like a gimme, but I definitely believe that the players should have made it. It sucks for a team that I thought was a a true contender to win to go to the Sweet 16, and it just didn't happen. They had to play Ohio, and I think they're better than Ohio, and they probably would have moved on to play Gonzaga, and who knows what happened there. But yeah, Creighton played well enough to win this game, and they move on.
Yeah, Creighton did play well, but like you mentioned, Santa Barbara just unable to make that layup. And Creighton did play well, but I think they were able to just get a little lucky in this one.
Yeah, you sometimes you need it. In the next game, we have Alabama versus Iona. This game was close until about the 7 minute mark of the second half when Alabama really blew it open. Rick Pitino put in a good game plan, but Iona just doesn't have the players that Alabama has, and it really showed. And Alabama again moves on.
Yeah, Alabama played really well, and one of the players for Alabama that played, actually, the coach for Alabama just did a great job helping Alabama. Even though they were not playing well, they did play well, and they were able to gain a significant lead at the end of the game and win it, just similar to how they were able to pull it out against LSU.
Yeah, the next game is USC versus Drake. This was really the show of the brothers, Evan Mobley and Isaiah Mobley. Both of them played outstanding, and they're really the duo that's carried them this far in the tournament. Um, I didn't really consider them when making my choices, and so my brackets I chose Drake, but I definitely should have picked USC more often because of that tandem, a sophomore freshman tandem that's just insane. And they end up getting the win by 16 over a Drake team that just won in the first four.
Yeah, USC is playing really well, and something that we'll mention on further in the pod in this episode. But I'm sure Jared Sandler was happy to see this win.
Yeah, of course. Next game we have Iowa versus Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon has a tremendous defense, but they really could not slow down the dominance of Luka Garza. Iowa ends up getting this one by 12, 86 to 74. And I think Grand Canyon should have some pride. It's their first tournament appearance, and they played well against a 2 seed that definitely should have won this game.
Yeah, you mentioned Luca Garza. He was just playing incredibly well down low. He also shot pretty well from 3 point line, making 4 out of his 5 shots, and that lets him have 24 points. But you definitely hit it right on the dot that Iowa was meant to win this game, and they did do it.
Yeah, the next game was a good one between Maryland and UConn. I believe UConn should have won this game as Maryland cannot rebound to UConn's capacity, but Maryland getting ends up getting the win, and another Big Ten team moves on.
Yeah, Maryland played really well against Michigan, but they still lost. And they kept playing well, and they were able to make it. As you mentioned, the rebound for Maryland, UConn had 39 rebounds, while Maryland had only 27. So that's 12 more rebounds, but Maryland was still able to pull it out.
Yeah, UConn's a great rebounding team, and I honestly am astonished that they won this game. Maryland did with the lack of rebounding talent. The next game was dominated by Jason Preston and Ben Vanderplas and uh, Ben. Are you looking at the stats right now? Is it Ben Roderick? Is that his name?
I am looking at it right now for Virginia versus Ohio.
Yeah, the Ohio game. It's Ben Vanderplas, Jason Preston. I think Ben Roderick. I'm not looking at it right now.
I just see the last names, but
Is one of them Roderick?
Yes, one of them is Roderick.
Yeah, it's Ben. Ben Roderick, Ben Vanderplas, Jason Preston. They really willed their team to a victory. All of them had double-digit points. Jason Preston almost had a triple-double, 11, 13, and 8. And they ended up winning this game versus a Virginia team that had no practice, and I really anticipated them to lose. you can't really have virtual practice and then it's still a game plan against a team in a tournament. So I definitely didn't see them winning this game, and they didn't.
Yeah, I believe a huge thing that we're seeing from COVID is teams having lower seeding or maybe having high seeding just because they miss some games. So that affects the standings. But also, like you mentioned, it's really hard for virtual practice. Like, how are you going to stay in shape when you can't practice against someone physically? And Ohio, another team, another game that just really messed up people's brackets.
Yeah, definitely. Next game was Oklahoma versus Mizzou. Close game, but Oklahoma pulls it out despite the fact that Devion Harmon was out. It was a great game. I really enjoyed it. Austin Reeves also played outstanding for Oklahoma, and he really pushed them over the edge.
Yeah, you mentioned Austin Reeves filling in for the player, and then Manic played really well. He was just killing Mizzou on 3 pointers, and I think that was another thing combined with Reeves, and that just helped um, power Oklahoma against Mizzou. And now Oklahoma, ever since Mizzou has left the Big 12, is 3-0 against Mizzou.
Yeah. The next game is the biggest win in all the tournament, not just to this far like the other one was, this far looking at it, but this game was 98-55. Um, Drew Timmy played amazing. So did Jalen Suggs. Many players on Gonzaga. Mark Few put in a great game plan, and I didn't think Norfolk State had a chance, and they ended up losing by the greatest margin of a team so far in the tournament.
Yeah, yeah. Gonzaga showed how they're a heavy favorite to win with this statement against Norfolk. You mentioned Drew Timmy, and just Gonzaga was ready to play, and that's a good thing to see.
Yeah, it really helped my bracket, as in 90% of my brackets, not 90, but in a large percentage of my brackets, I have Gonzaga winning over 50%, I would assume. And it's good to see them win. The next game we're going to look at is a 11-6 game where the 11 seed won. It's UCLA and BYU. UCLA won by 11, and they really dominated this game, even though it was close, and they pulled out the win.
Yeah, you did mention how BYU in our last episode was coming from a shaky conference in UCLA, and we predicted UCLA, and that's what happened. UCLA played really well.
Yeah, the next game is Abilene Christian versus Texas, the last real game played. Um, Abilene Christian had the best defensive efficiency in all of the tournament. I thought they had a great chance of winning this game, and they ended up winning on free throws at the end. And I'll go a little bit into the next round. Even though they lose big in the last round, they just couldn't get their defense set, and they couldn't score. And this time, their offense was a lot more fluid. Even though they scored only 53 points, and their defense was a lot more suffocating, forcing 23 turnovers.
Yeah, suffocating is the perfect word to describe it. Like, we saw the games, like you have Colorado versus Georgetown, where it was just really easy flowing, and then you have Abilene Christian versus Texas, and there were just some two gritty teams fighting it out, and Abilene Christian was able to win it off some free throws.
Yeah, the next game wasn't really a game at all. That's why I said the last one was the last game played in the first round. This one was between Oregon and VCU. Um, I feel bad for all the Oregon players that never gave it a chance to win this game. And I think even if you lose, even these 16 seeds that lose, they at least get to experience. I'm here. I'm playing in a March Madness game. I've waited my whole life to be here, and I think we all need to give credit to this VCU roster. They made it. They deserved it. And even with the loss, all these teams deserve to be here. They either won the conference tournament or got voted in. And I feel really bad for these VCU players who didn't get to experience what all the other teams in this tournament did. What do you think?
Yeah, I was sad because the main reason for the tournament just being in one place is to prevent things like this. You're in a bubble, which should work, and it kind of just brought us back to reality of living in 2021 that COVID's still here and it can still affect games. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again, as now we're in 16 teams left. Hopefully, the bubble still is working properly and we don't have to forfeit games because it would just be such a shame for any of these teams, even though it is such a shame for VCU, as you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. I want to compare this to NHL hockey. They had a much better bubble system, and they had two places. Um, I've listened to some of the interviews about what happened, and apparently there's not as close as a bubble. It's more up to the players and coaches, which I very much am against. It's hard for players to not uh, control the urge of going out and getting some breakfast or eating some food somewhere else, and just go sightseeing in a new city. I feel like that's human nature to go be curious and go look around, but I feel like you have to have implementation of, hey guys, we cannot afford to uh, get illness. We cannot afford to test positive and miss this game. It means so much to the organization, the college, the NCAA, and just the integrity of the tournament. And I feel like they should have had more precautions set out to not allow this to happen, even at the detriment of some of the players not getting to experience Indianapolis in its whole. I feel like it was more important to make sure the integrity of the tournament was held, and I believe that they lost a little bit of that when VCU was told that they couldn't play in this game.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing for the NCAA to do, and I think after there are many things that happened, you have the differences in food between the men's and women's, and then you also have difference in weight rooms. And I think the NCAA should really think about what they learned and then think of how they can improve. And I remember listening to one of the halftime shows of them saying you should have actual players to talk to the NCAA, because I think that's a great idea because they could say, hey, if it's up to us, it's going to be pretty tough. So how about you set more regulations and we need this and this. And that's just getting players from the floor instead of like higher ups because you're not as close to the players. That's just a thought that I think the NCAA should look into.
Yeah, and I think it's essential for me to talk about the what you just said for a second and stop talking about the tournament for a bit and just talk about what the NCAA did. And this is an organization. This is about schools. This isn't about revenue being brought in. This isn't the WNBA. That's an organization by itself that has to give its own players off of its revenue certain amount of money. The NBA, it's because of how many fans are there. They give money to the organizations who then have to use that money on players, stadiums, uh, etc., staff, and everything. That's not true here. The NCAA has enough money to give equal uh, rooms, food, weight room to all players in all sports. Um, while you may need different equipment for each sport or bigger, smaller rooms depending on the players' sizes and all that stuff, I feel like it is essential for the NCAA as an organization to give equal opportunity to all of its players. This isn't something where I know for a fact that less players or less people watch the women's tournament. However, that's not what this is. The NCAA has enough money. They made enough money, especially because they don't give money to players for their own personal like gain, for their image and likeness, as they like to call it. They have enough money that they've already taken away from the players. They can at least afford to give every person there, male or female, no matter the race, religion, or anything, the same equipment, food, and gym, and that everybody else got there. And I'm saddened to see how it turned out. And like I said, they didn't handle anything uh, in that respect right with COVID, allowing VCU to end their season before it could even really start in the tournament. What do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned how NCAA hasn't really had to pay their players, which is something that I believe is going to be fixed. And I think they should definitely take a long, hard look and see like you've made such a profit off these players, and it's just such these players. They are players, and some of them are going to have NBA potential and make it to the NBA. Some are going to try, but some might not fail, and it's just a thing they want to continue from high school. But it's so hard for a college athlete because if let's say they want to try to do school and they really want to push studies, they also have a ton of practices and they're not really making any money. And then for the women's side, they're putting in the same amount of work, maybe even more than some of the men's teams. And the men's teams are getting better equipment, better food. And that's if you want to go into food, nutrition's another thing how can they participate off the food they're being given. But it's something I think the NCAA needs to fix, and they need to take a hard look and figure out how can we make this better. And I think we can move on to the second round, unless
Yeah.
you got anything else.
No, that's just it. I'm just disappointed in how the NCAA has acted recently. That's always been a conversation is how much stuff needs to change, and I think there needs to be at least a federal investigation of is this equality? Because again, it's an organization for school. It's for school. Uh, it's not for the benefit of an organization. They're just taking money away from the players, in my opinion, and to not give them at least equal food, equal equipment to better themselves, like you said. I don't think Tom Brady would still be in the league if it wasn't for his nutrition. Same thing with LeBron James. He said he spends $2 million on his body per year. Obviously, not everybody can do that, but if you're not going to give the same nutrition as you mentioned, how can the female players play better? How can they play as they would at home, where they're getting better food, where they're getting better sleep? They're already not at their house. They're not going to have a normal system. They can't even leave the hotel, or they're not supposed to. Uh, well, they shouldn't be able to because of the bubble. But like I said, it's tough. I mean, the only places they should be is a hotel and the court, and they should be afforded. Well, the NCAA can definitely afford to give them the best meals possible, the best weight room possible, the best rooms possible, and it's sad that they don't allow that to both men and women. But yes, it's definitely time to move on to the second round. In the first game, we have Loyola Chicago versus Illinois, and this was a shocker to most. What did you think?
Yeah, it definitely shocked me. Loyola of Chicago just came right out of the gate, and they did not let their foot off the pedal, and they played really well against Coburn, who I think that was one of the reasons with IO that we had Illinois winning, and I had Illinois winning a lot of my brackets. So it was just something great from Loyola of Chicago and the power of Sister Jean, man.
Yeah, definitely the prayers that she said before definitely worked. And I think it was more they played well against Io. Io had 6 turnovers, I believe, only had 9 points. He even hit double digits. And the play of Krutwig, Cameron Krutwig, amazing. Williamson, as you mentioned, amazing. Their team just comes together. And it's impressive to see a mid major like this consistently now. We can say consistently because it's happened twice um, be able to beat good teams, really good teams, and move on. And I definitely have them favored in the next round matchup against Oregon State, but we'll get there later on. I think we can move on to the second game on Sunday, March 21st, which was Baylor versus Wisconsin. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, Baylor played really well. They did. They had 23 free throws and they made 18 of them. So that's just a really good thing in comparison to the 7 free throws from Wisconsin. So Baylor did have a lot more free throw chances, but they capitalized on them. And we could see in the first round how free throws changed the outcome of the game in Ohio State and in ACU versus Texas.
Yeah, and Baylor's really asserted their dominance, and they're definitely a team that I could think they're gonna have to step in their own foot for them to fall, in my opinion. Uh, Next game, we have another shocker where Syracuse beats West Virginia by 3 points, 75-72. Same scores the Oral Roberts versus Ohio State game, and Buddy Boeheim goes off again, makes many threes. They come back, then West Virginia comes back, and Syracuse comes back, and then Syracuse ends up holding it throughout. And I thought West Virginia was going to have a chance. It didn't look like Syracuse didn't inbound the ball at the end, but Jim Boeheim made some changes and put in the freshman, and it worked out.
Yeah, just a couple things I want to focus on. We've talked about the 2-3 defense, and they played excellently. They played great against West Virginia, and I think that kept it took West Virginia a long time to figure it out. And then you mentioned Buddy Boeheim, but also Gerard. He shot really well against three, and he made 4 of them. And combined with Buddy Boeheim was a huge thing. And like you mentioned, Jim Boeheim had because they were struggling. I think they called like 2 timeouts. Um, in there was like 30 seconds left, so it was definitely a good thing for West Virginia if they could not inbound the ball. But Jim Boeheim, as you mentioned, made some personnel changes, and that helped them win the game.
Yeah, and then we can move on to the best game of the day, in my opinion, between Arkansas and Texas Tech. Moses Mooney played well, but they did not want to give him the ball the last 5 positions. being somebody that was cheering for Arkansas, it was tough seeing them not give the ball to the best player on the court. But Texas Tech missed two wide open layups at the end of the game, and Arkansas escapes this one with a victory.
Yeah, Texas Tech, McClung did not play like he did in the first game of the tournament, but like you said, Arkansas played well, and they're definitely looking to get the win in the next round.
Yeah, the next game is between Houston and Rutgers. Houston was down by multiple times by double-digit points, but they came back, won this game. They're a team I think will go very far, and they scared me here for a second. I thought my bracket was going to be entirely busted, not just a little bit, a lot. But it turned out that they won the game, and another big team, 10 team falls after some of them made it to the second round. I think 4 made it to the second round after 9 were in the tournament, which isn't a great stat. And then another team falls. What do you think?
Yeah, Rutgers played really well. Um, I mentioned Young, his dad played for University of Houston, and he played really well. But Houston was able to seal the deal and get the win and move on to the next round.
Yeah, the next game was between Oral Roberts and Florida. Um, this game was close. Many people, even while the game was going on, thought Florida was going to win by a major margin. And then Oral Roberts comes back, Kevin O'Banner, Max Asmus, same story, same ending, 3-point victory, just like before. And they go, they keep on dancing.
Yeah, you mentioned it was like Florida had like I think a 10-point lead, but then Asmus and O'Banner were able to uh, bring the lead, tie the game back up. And I was just really shocked because Asmus played the whole game, and I think O'Banner too against Ohio State. So I'm like, I don't think they can do it against Florida. But then I was definitely rooting for him because of Asmus. And then how can I not root for a guy named Kevin? I got to root for him. And
Yeah,
then
they're just sorry to interrupt, but they haven't sat out on a second the entire tournament. They played 50, they played 95 and 95 minutes, or 85 of 85 minutes. That's insane. I don't know how they do it. Continue.
yeah, so I was just gonna go mention now they have a week of rest or almost a week. So that's a thing that I can definitely see them playing very well against Arkansas. It was just a good thing from uh, Oral Roberts to do, and I think we can move on.
Yeah. So the next game was Villanova versus North Texas. North Texas was actually up by 8, 21-13 early in this game. But Villanova really turned it on. Javion Hamlet tried to carry his team again and couldn't. Um, like I said, it's nothing to take away from North Texas. Many people didn't expect them to make it here, but hey, here they are. Uh, Villanova without their team, without their best player, in my opinion, Colin Gassiepi, uh, wins again. They win by 23, and they're moving on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, and just in contrast to Oral Roberts, North Texas did pull off a huge upset, but I think just off the high of beating Purdue, they just kind of got welcomed back down to earth from Villanova. But also, Villanova has a better track record in the playoffs than North Texas, as they just won their first game this tournament. But sad thing to see North Texas go, but a great job by Villanova, as they are missing their best player, and they will get them back next round.
Yeah, so next we have Oregon State versus Oklahoma State, the two OSUs that made it to the second round. Rip Ohio State. And this one had the best player apparently in all of college basketball, Cade Cunningham. What do you think about his play?
Yeah, I unfortunately could not see the game, but it was just sad to see Oklahoma State lose as Cade Cunningham is projected to be the number one overall pick. He did score 24 points, but was 6 for 20 off his field goals. But it was something he mentioned about how he wanted to take his team and he was just unable to. But Oregon State right now is just on a hot streak and they're playing really well right now in this tournament.
Yeah, so the next game we have is on the next day, which was Monday, March 22nd, and it was between Oregon and Iowa. Uh, Iowa cannot play defense, even though Luka Garza put up 36 points and played well. They just ran away. What do you think?
Yeah, you did mention Garza. It was sad as it's his final collegiate game, and now he hopefully will get drafted in the NBA. and most likely will, as he put up 36 points. But Oregon just was the better team, as 4 of their starters were all in double digits.
Yeah, so we can move on to the next game, which was close for a while, and then Gonzaga just ran away, and that game was Gonzaga versus Oklahoma. I really didn't think Oklahoma had a chance, and I was worried for a second that Austin Reeves and co would carry them, but it didn't turn out to be true, and Drew Timme put up 30 points. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just about to say Drew Timme with 30 points. It was a tough game, but Gonzaga is still showing that they are the big contenders for the tournament. Haven't lost a game yet, and get a 16 lead, 16 margin in their win.
Yeah, the next game was not close. UCLA Abilene Christian, a 10-point game. I believe Abilene Christian played well at the beginning, but they couldn't score, like I said, and their defense wasn't as crisp as before. But again, another team doesn't take away from their success before. They will always have that win in their memory. And this game, UCLA just ran away with. UCLA has a better defense than Texas does, and it really showed. What do you think?
Yeah, you mentioned Abilene Christian. Their defense was just not as crisp. I believe that they were just really tired from their win, just really tired from the game against Texas and UCLA, who just played really well.
Yeah. The next game was uh, Creighton versus Ohio. Jason Preston shot like 1 of 9 from the field, did not play well. And even though the game was close at the beginning and Ohio started to make a push at the end, it just didn't turn out. And Creighton moves on again.
Yeah, Creighton shooting 42% from 3 pointers, from 3 point, while the Bobcats only shot 23%. So Creighton's just playing really well, shooting really well from 3 point, and I think we can move on.
Yeah, the next game, Michigan versus LSU, I think had a terrible call. LSU was, I think, priming a comeback, and if they did make the end one, would have been down by 3. They called a very, very questionable charge on Cameron, I believe, and that really lost the game, in my opinion. Um, the player number 12, I can't remember his name, was clearly moving for Michigan, clearly, and it just puts a bad taste in your mouth. You don't like to see those calls played in a game of this magnitude, and Michigan ends up winning by 8.
Yeah, and we did talk about the NCAA fixing some things with like COVID, and then equality between men's and women sports. And I think they really need to look at the refs, because, like you mentioned, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Like, March Madness is a beautiful thing, and we get to see so many stories and talk about them. But sometimes those stories can be harmed by it's out of the player's control. It's off the ref's hands or the ref's whistle, and he decides. And LSU versus Michigan was just one of those times where a ref made a call. Definitely didn't. It definitely changed the game in LSU, as you said, but in other games, like, it just made a tip towards the other team's favor. And sometimes you just gotta beat the refs, but it's a sad thing to see.
Yeah, the next game is between Florida State and Colorado. Florida State ends up winning this game by 18. Another player I feel like I have to mention is McKinley Wright, the fourth, I believe. Um, Senior year, another player that deserves a ton of praise. I don't believe that he gets the respect he deserves. He really played well for Colorado. Not this game. This was one of his worst games, but I definitely believe he's another player like Michael Weathers that deserves a ton of respect for everything he's done his uh, for his university, and I hope that he gets a chance at the next level.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, as we talked about Georgetown versus Colorado, Colorado was just on fire from three. They couldn't replicate that success, as they shot 24% from three, only making 6 out of 25. And I think that was the thing that hampered Colorado and led to them losing this game.
Yeah, the next one is Alabama versus Maryland. This is a 19-point victory by Alabama. Alabama was up by so much early, and it wasn't really close. Maryland was not competitive in this game, and Alabama walks away with the win.
Yeah, Alabama is continuing to play well, and they're just keeping, while the Maryland didn't try to bring it, but they kept the game in their hands, which is a good thing to see from Alabama.
Yeah, and the next game was a blowout. Kansas loses 85-51 against USC, and I don't know what to say. Evan Mobley and Isaiah Mobley again, the tandem, the brother tandem, carried USC, and there's many players on that team that are great. And Kansas, like you said, doesn't have that star player, and it definitely showed as Bill Self and Co. really could not get it going.
Yeah, you mentioned Mobley, and like they're a great duo, and I just don't see a duo that could help Kansas, and I think that's why it was just, that's why it was so tipped heavy in USC's favor, and we also saw, as we also mentioned earlier, Kansas barely made it out of the first round, and USC was just able to capitalize on it, and another thing that puts a smile on Jared Sandler's face.
Yeah. Now I will just preview quickly all the games that are happening in the Sweet 16. So on Saturday, March 27th, the first game at 2:40 p.m. Eastern is between Loyola Chicago and Oregon State. The next game is at 5:15 Eastern, uh, between Baylor and Villanova. Next game is Arkansas versus 15 seeded Oral Roberts at 7:25 p.m. Eastern. And the last game that night, 9:55 p.m. Eastern, is between Houston and Syracuse. And on Sunday, Gonzaga and Creighton meet up at 2:10 p.m. Eastern. Then at 5 p.m. Eastern, Michigan and Florida State meet up. And then at 7:15, Alabama and UCLA will play their game. And then lastly, a Pac-12 matchup between number 6 seeded USC and number 7 seeded Oregon will meet at 9:45 p.m. Eastern, and those teams will compete for the Elite Eight.
It's going to be definitely a great, going to be some great games, and I can't wait to watch them. And any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's just going to be a great Sweet 16. I just hope this tournament leaves without any, like you said, teams with no more COVID cases having to kick out a college for having any ties to COVID. And I hope this will continue until the Elite Eight Final Four National Championship. And I just hope the Sweet 16 games are good.
Yep, and I'm sure there will be. We'll be rooting for a lot of teams, and let us know if your bracket's like totally busted, like ours. Let us know if you predicted some of these, and let us know down in the comments. Just a few things you heard me mention Jared Sandler. We interviewed him. Make sure to check that out and check out his YouTube channel. But on new information about our interview alum is Taylor Hearn, who just learned yesterday, late last night, that he would make the Texas Rangers roster. So it's just a great thing to see, as Taylor was so kind to us, and it's just a great thing to see. And as a Rangers fan myself, I can't wait to see him on the mound, and hopefully, and it would just be great to see. So make sure to check out that interview. And then our next episode, while we did focus on college, we will be going back into the pro level with the NBA, as today was just a crazy day. And we will do that, will be what our next episode is focused on.